A long, long time ago, there was a small village called Amofia. They were very good and loving people. In the village of Amofia, there lived a couple named Obi and Ginika. They had been married for some years and loved each other so much, but they had one problem. They didn't have a child of their own, and this troubled them greatly, especially Ginika. She would always go about looking for a solution to her problem. She went from one prayer house to another, and her husband would always tell her to wait on God's time. She was so troubled that her friend Agbonma always came around to comfort her and keep her company. After a few months, Obi and Ginika realized that they were pregnant, and they were so happy. Their dream had finally come to reality. Obi would always tell Ginika to rest and not stress herself and their unborn child. She did everything possible to stay healthy so she could have a healthy baby. Soon after, Ginika gave birth to a bouncing baby girl, and she was filled with so much joy. She named the baby Nkoli. Some days later, the worst thing happened to her. She realized that her baby was blind. Nkoli never opened her eyes even when she was awake. Ginika and her husband were so troubled because they knew their child was in danger. The people of Amofia had a tradition of executing any child that was deformed, as they were seen to bring bad luck upon the land. So whenever any person gives birth to a deformed child, the king of the village sends his guards to take the child away and kill them in the forests. Nkoli and her husband were so worried, and visitors who came to see the newborn began to notice that the child couldn't open her eyes. They couldn't afford to lose their child because they knew how long they had waited to have her, and they didn't know how possible it was having another one. So they came up with a plan before the villagers noticed the condition of the baby and reported it to the king. They decided to take Nkoli to Ginika's maternal home, which was the neighboring village, where she would live with Ginika's elder sister, Auntie Uso. They packed the little belongings the baby had and set out to the neighboring village at night, when they knew everyone was already asleep, to avoid attracting anyone's attention. Early the next morning, they got back to their village and began crying and wailing that their child Nkoli was dead. The neighbors gathered and asked what the problem was, and they narrated that they didn't know what happened, but they just woke up to find out that she was dead, so they buried her immediately. The villagers felt their pain and consoled them. They were happy that everyone bought their lives. At least their daughter was safe, and that was what mattered to them at that point. The following days, Ginika felt so sad to be away from her child, but she and Obi always went to pay her a visit from time to time. Auntie Uso took her in like her own daughter, and Nkoli grew up to become a wonderful child despite her deformity. In fact, other parents use her as a case study when teaching their children about morality. Everyone loved Nkoli and always wanted to be around her. She also had some friends in the village. Auntie Uso was a powerful healer in the village, and the villagers always came to her to treat them of their ailments. Nkoli, despite being blind, learned about these herbs from her Auntie Uso. From the way a herb felt in her palms or how it smelled, she could tell one from the other and what each herb could do. She became so good at it that she joined her auntie in treating people. As she got older, Auntie Uso finally opened up to her about why she was staying with her and not her parents. Nkoli was so shocked about the traditions of her people. If her parents had not decided to take the risk of bringing her to Auntie Uso, that was how she would have been executed and there would be no trace of her. She detested her village and was glad not to be there. Auntie Uso fell sick after a few years, so Nkoli took her place in treating people and they became well. She eventually became even more experienced than Auntie Uso. She mixed different herbs for Auntie Uso, but her auntie wasn't getting any better. In fact, she got worse. This troubled Nkoli because her auntie was all she had in the village and she couldn't afford losing her. Every morning, she would give Auntie Uso herbs to drink to make her stronger. One fateful morning, after mixing the herbs for her auntie, she called out to her, but Auntie Uso wasn't responding. She searched all around the house but couldn't find her. So she went outside to check for her at her usual spot where she sat. She kept on calling and shaking her auntie to wake up, but there was no response. She cried out and neighbors ran to know what the problem was. It turned out that Auntie Uso was dead. She couldn't believe it. She felt like her world had crumbled. How would she live? The news of Auntie Uso's demise spread like wildfire. In no time, her parents heard the news and they felt so bad. They thought about their daughter and they knew that they couldn't bring her into the village, else she would still be executed. So they had no choice than to go and stay with her for some time till they found another way out. They both traveled to see their daughter Nkoli, and when she heard of the arrival, she cried tears of joy because she now had her family there with her. She was so happy to have them around her, and she also let them know that Auntie Uso told her about the traditions of the village and how she hated her village and the king. A few weeks after Auntie Uso's demise, Nkoli and her mother Ginika were sitting outside, discussing as usual, when her mother got the greatest shock of her life. The king of Amofia was at their compound. Ginika believed that someone must have heard that Nkoli was still alive and reported to the king, and he came with his entourage to do the needful. The king was surprised to see Ginika there, and she told him that Nkoli was her daughter. He said that his son had been very sick for weeks now, and they had done everything possible for him to become better, but the boy got worse. So they were directed to the neighboring village because they heard that a powerful healer was there. So that's why they were at the healer's compound. Nkoli was so furious and didn't want to have anything to do with the king. But when she heard of how sick the child was, she decided to help him. She mixed some of her herbs and gave the boy to drink. And a few minutes later, the boy was up on his feet. The king was surprised that a deformed person could do extraordinary things. He realized that deformity was not actually a curse, and that they were myopic to kill all deformed children in their village. He wondered how many wonderful talents they had executed and felt really foolish. He was grateful to have his eyes opened, and he apologized to Nkoli and her family and promised them that the village of Amofia would abolish such archaic traditions. He invited them back to the village, and Nkoli and her family became nobles and were celebrated. The lesson to be learned here is that sometimes we can be myopic in our thinking, just like the king. So we should learn to look at the bigger picture when addressing issues. Also, deformity is not a disease. For the fact that a person is deformed does not mean that they are not capable of achieving great things. We should also bear in mind that some difficult situations are preparing us for something greater, just the way Nkoli's deformity raised her family higher in the village. I hope you enjoyed watching this video. Please don't forget to give it a big thumbs up, comment, subscribe, and turn on your post notification to get notified when next I post a new video. Bye!